My name is Kaycee Sullivan, and I'm 31 years old. For most of my life, I believed that family was supposed to be your safe place, the people who showed up no matter what. I thought blood meant loyalty, that shared memories meant unconditional love. But last December, I learned that sometimes the people who raised you can make you feel more invisible than strangers ever could. This is the story of how my parents threw the biggest holiday party of the year and forgot to invite their own daughter. And how I made sure they never forgot me again. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow, I've saved something extra special for you. Let me paint you a picture of who I was before everything fell apart. I grew up in Portland, Oregon, in a modest two-story house on Maple Street where my parents still live today. My father, Richard Sullivan, worked as a regional sales manager for a pharmaceutical company. My mother, Patricia, taught 4th grade at the local elementary school for nearly 3 decades before retiring 5 years ago. We weren't wealthy, but we were comfortable. There were family dinners every Sunday, birthday cakes with too many candles, and holiday traditions that felt sacred. I have 2 siblings. My older brother, Marcus, is 35 and works as a financial advisor in Seattle. He married his college sweetheart, Nicole, and they have 2 kids, Ethan and Lily. My younger sister, Vanessa, is 28 and just finished her residency as a pediatrician. She's engaged to Derek, a software engineer who my parents absolutely adore. Then there's me. Kaycee. The middle child. The one who chose a different path. After college, I moved to San Francisco to pursue a career in nonprofit work. I've spent the last 8 years managing community outreach programs for an organization that helps formerly incarcerated individuals rebuild their lives. The pay isn't great. The hours are exhausting. But every time someone walks through our doors and finds hope again, I remember why I do it. My parents never understood my choice. My father once said during a particularly tense Thanksgiving dinner that I was wasting my potential. My mother nodded silently, pushing mashed potatoes around her plate like the conversation made her lose her appetite. Still, I called them every week. I sent birthday cards. I showed up for Christmas and Easter and every family gathering they hosted. I tried. God, I tried so hard to be present even when they made me feel like my presence didn't matter. My brother Marcus always got the spotlight. Dad would brag about his investment portfolio and the promotions he earned. Vanessa was the golden child who could do no wrong, the doctor who made them proud just by existing. And me? I was the afterthought. The daughter they introduced with a hesitant smile and a quick subject change. By November of last year, I'd grown used to feeling like a guest in my own family. I told myself it didn't hurt anymore. I convinced myself that I'd built my own life in San Francisco, surrounded by people who valued my work and saw my worth. I had my partner, Jordan, a graphic designer I'd been dating for 2 years. I had my close friends, my colleagues, my little apartment overlooking the bay. I didn't need my parents' approval. Or so I thought. Because when December rolled around and I saw the invitation on my brother's social media, something inside me shattered in a way I wasn't prepared for. It was a Tuesday afternoon when I first saw it. I was sitting in my office, halfway through a stack of grant applications, when my phone buzzed with a notification. Marcus had posted a photo on Instagram. The image showed a cream-colored invitation with elegant gold lettering. Sullivan Family Annual Holiday Gala, it read. December 23rd at 7 in the evening. Formal attire requested. The address listed was my parents' house. I stared at the screen, my coffee growing cold in my hand. Marcus had captioned the photo with, "Can't wait for Mom and Dad's holiday party. Going to be epic this year." The comments below were already flooding in. Nicole had posted 3 heart emojis. Vanessa commented, "Already picked out my dress." Even some of my extended family members, aunts and uncles and cousins I barely spoke to, were chiming in with their excitement. My chest tightened. I scrolled back through my text messages with my mother. Nothing. I checked my email, thinking maybe it had gone to spam. Nothing. I even checked my mailbox that evening when I got home, shuffling through bills and grocery store flyers. Still nothing. For a moment, I wondered if I'd somehow missed it, if the invitation had been lost in transit or accidentally thrown away. But deep down, I knew the truth. They hadn't sent me one. That night, I called my mother. She answered on the fourth ring, her voice bright and cheerful. "Kaycee, sweetheart. What a nice surprise." I could hear the television in the background, one of those cooking shows she loved to watch. I tried to keep my voice steady. "Hey, Mom. I saw Marcus posted about your holiday party. It looks beautiful." Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. There was a pause. Just a half-second of silence, but I caught it. "Oh, yes," she said, her tone shifting slightly. "We decided to do something a little bigger this year. Your father's been wanting to host something special for his colleagues." I waited for her to say more. I waited for the invitation, the explanation, the acknowledgement that her daughter hadn't been included. Instead, she just said, "How's work going, honey?" My throat felt tight. "Mom, am I invited?" Another pause. Longer this time. "Well, Kaycee, it's really more of a formal event. Lots of your father's business associates, some of our friends from the country club. We thought you'd probably be too busy anyway, with your work in San Francisco and everything." The words hit me like cold water. Too busy. "Mom, it's Christmas. I always come home for Christmas." She sighed, and I could picture her rubbing her temple the way she did when she was frustrated. "I know, sweetheart, but this year is different. We're doing something more upscale, more sophisticated. It's not really your scene. You know how you feel about those fancy gatherings. We just thought you'd be more comfortable sitting this one out." I couldn't believe what I was hearing. "You thought I'd be more comfortable being excluded from my own family's holiday party?" "Don't be dramatic, Kaycee," she said, her voice taking on that sharp edge I knew too well. "It's not about excluding you. It's just that Marcus and Vanessa fit into this crowd better. They understand the social expectations. You've always been more casual, more laid back. We didn't want you to feel out of place." My hand trembled as I gripped the phone. "So you're not inviting me because you're embarrassed of me?" "That's not what I said." "But that's what you meant." She exhaled sharply. "Kaycee, I don't have time for this right now. Your father and I have a lot to plan. If you want to come over for a quiet dinner the day after Christmas, we can do that. But the party is what it is." Before I could respond, she added, "I have to go. The caterer is calling. We'll talk later, okay? Love you." The line went dead. I sat there in my apartment, staring at my phone, feeling like someone had reached into my chest and twisted. Jordan came home an hour later and found me sitting in the dark. "Babe, what's wrong?" they asked, flipping on the light. I told them everything. About the invitation I never got. About my mother's excuses. About being deemed not sophisticated enough for my own family's party. Jordan's face shifted from concern to anger. "That's messed up, Kaycee. That's really messed up." I nodded, wiping at my eyes. I don't know what hurts more. The fact that they didn't invite me, or the fact that they don't even see why it's wrong. Jordan sat beside me, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. "What are you going to do?" I didn't have an answer yet. But as I sat there in the dim light of my apartment, something inside me shifted. I'd spent my whole life trying to fit into their world, trying to be the daughter they wanted. Maybe it was time they learned what it felt like to be left out in the cold. For 3 days, I couldn't stop thinking about that phone call. I replayed my mother's words over and over, dissecting every syllable, every dismissive tone. "Not your scene. More sophisticated. You'd feel out of place." Each phrase was a tiny blade, cutting deeper than I wanted to admit. I found myself distracted at work, staring at my computer screen without seeing the words. My colleague, Amanda, noticed during our Thursday morning meeting when I completely zoned out during a presentation about our new mentorship program. "Earth to Kaycee," she said gently, waving a hand in front of my face. "You okay?" I forced a smile. "Yeah, sorry. Just family stuff." She gave me that knowing look, the one that said she understood without needing details. Holiday season brings out the best and worst in families, doesn't it? She had no idea how right she was. That evening, Jordan and I sat on our balcony overlooking the bay. The December air was crisp, and the city lights twinkled like scattered diamonds below us. Jordan handed me a mug of hot chocolate, the kind with extra marshmallows that always made me feel like a kid again. "You've been quiet," Jordan said softly. "Still thinking about the party?" I nodded, wrapping my hands around the warm ceramic. "I keep wondering what I did wrong. What made them decide I wasn't good enough to be there?" Jordan shifted closer. "You didn't do anything wrong. They're the ones who are messed up." "Maybe," I said. "But it still hurts. And the worst part is, everyone else got an invitation. Aunts, uncles, cousins I haven't seen in years. Even my dad's golfing buddies and my mom's book club friends. But not me. Their own daughter." We sat in silence for a moment, watching the fog roll in across the water. Then Jordan said something that changed everything. "You know what? Maybe you should go anyway." I looked over, confused. "What do you mean?" "I wasn't invited." "Exactly," Jordan said, a slight smile playing at the corners of their mouth. "They didn't invite you because they assumed you wouldn't fit in, right? Because you're not sophisticated enough or whatever garbage excuse they gave. So prove them wrong. Show up looking absolutely incredible. Be the most gracious, charming, sophisticated person there. Make them regret ever doubting you." The idea planted itself in my mind like a seed. "You mean just crash my own family's party?" "Not crash," Jordan corrected. "Attend. It's your family. You have every right to be there. And honestly, what are they going to do? Kick you out in front of all their fancy guests? That would be way more embarrassing for them than for you." I felt something shift in my chest. Not quite hope, but something close to it. A spark of defiance, maybe. "I don't know. That seems pretty bold. Kaycee, you work with people whose society has written off. You fight for them every single day. You advocate for second chances and dignity and respect. Why can't you do the same for yourself?" Jordan had a point. I'd spent years standing up for others, but when it came to my own family, I'd always just accepted their judgment. I'd shrunk myself to fit their expectations, apologized for being different, tried to prove my worth through quiet compliance. And where had that gotten me? Uninvited to a family gathering during the season that was supposed to be about togetherness. Over the weekend, I made my decision. I wasn't going to call and beg for an invitation. I wasn't going to have another painful conversation where my mother made excuses and my father stayed silent. I was going to show up on December 23rd, dressed to perfection, and remind my parents exactly who their daughter was. But I wasn't going to do it alone, and I wasn't going to do it unprepared. On Monday morning, I called in a favor from my friend Simone, who worked as a stylist for a boutique in Union Square. "I need to look absolutely stunning," I told her. "Like, stop traffic, drop dead gorgeous. Can you help me?" Simone laughed. "Girl, I've been waiting for you to ask me this for years. What's the occasion?" "Revenge," I said simply. "Oh, this is going to be fun." We spent Tuesday evening shopping. Simone pulled dresses I never would have chosen for myself. Deep emerald greens, rich burgundies, sleek blacks with elegant cuts. I tried on what felt like hundreds of options before we found it. A floor-length navy blue gown with a subtle shimmer, fitted at the waist with a flowing skirt. It had a modest neckline but an open back that made me feel both sophisticated and daring. "That's the one," Simone said, her eyes lighting up. "You look like royalty." I stared at myself in the mirror. I barely recognized the woman looking back at me. She looked confident, powerful, worthy. "Now for shoes, jewelry, and hair," Simone said, already pulling out her phone to schedule appointments. "We're going to make sure your parents never underestimate you again." As I looked at my reflection, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time around my family. I felt ready. Not to fight, but to stand tall. To walk into that party with my head held high and show them that their daughter was someone worth celebrating. Whether they realized it or not, I was about to teach them a lesson they'd never forget. The game had changed. And for the first time, I was playing to win. December 23rd arrived faster than I expected. I'd taken the day off work and caught an early morning flight to Portland. Jordan wanted to come with me, but I knew this was something I needed to do alone. This wasn't about having backup or moral support. This was about standing on my own 2 feet in front of the people who had raised me to doubt myself. I checked into a hotel near downtown, not wanting to risk running into my family before the party. The room was small but comfortable, with a view of the city lights beginning to glow as dusk approached. I laid out my dress carefully on the bed, along with the silver heels Simone had insisted I buy and the delicate diamond earrings Jordan had surprised me with the night before I left. "For courage," they'd said, fastening them gently to my ears. "So you remember someone thinks you're worth celebrating." I'd cried then, but tonight there would be no tears. Tonight was about showing up exactly as I was and forcing my family to see me. At 5:30, I started getting ready. I took my time with my makeup, following the tutorial Simone had sent me. Smoky eyes that made my hazel irises pop. A subtle contour that defined my cheekbones. Deep red lipstick that felt bold and unapologetic. My hair, usually pulled back in a practical ponytail, fell in soft waves around my shoulders. When I finally stepped into the dress and zipped it up, I took a long look in the mirror. The woman staring back at me looked nothing like the Kaycee who usually showed up to family events in jeans and a sweater, trying to blend into the background. This woman demanded attention. This woman belonged anywhere she chose to be. I arrived at my parents' house at 7:15, fashionably late. Cars lined both sides of Maple Street, expensive models that gleamed under the streetlights. Through the front windows, I could see the warm glow of chandelier light and the shadows of people moving around with champagne glasses. Christmas music drifted out into the cold night air, something classical and elegant. My heart hammered in my chest as I walked up the driveway. I could still turn around. I could get back in my rental car and drive away, spend Christmas alone in my hotel room, fly back to San Francisco and pretend this night never happened. But then I thought about every dismissive comment, every time I'd been made to feel less than, every moment I'd shrunk myself to make them comfortable. I rang the doorbell. My father answered. Richard Sullivan stood in the doorway wearing a tailored black suit, a glass of scotch in his hand. His eyes widened when he saw me, confusion flickering across his face before recognition set in. "Kaycee," he said, his voice caught somewhere between shock and disbelief. "What are you doing here?" I smiled, channeling every ounce of confidence I'd spent the last 2 weeks building. "Hello, Dad. Merry Christmas. I came for the party." He glanced over his shoulder, then back at me, clearly unsure how to handle this situation. "But your mother said she talked to you. She said you understood this wasn't really your kind of event." "She did say that," I replied calmly. "But I decided to come anyway. I am part of this family, after all. May I come in?" Before he could answer, my mother appeared behind him. Patricia Sullivan wore a stunning silver gown, her hair perfectly styled, pearls at her neck. When she saw me, her face went pale, then flushed with something between embarrassment and anger. "Kaycee," she said tightly. "This is unexpected." "I know," I said. Surprise. People were starting to notice. I could see heads turning, whispers beginning to circulate. My mother's expression shifted, her social smile sliding into place like a mask. She couldn't make a scene. Not here. Not in front of all these people she was so desperate to impress. "Well," she said through gritted teeth disguised as a pleasant tone. I suppose you should come in. We'll talk about this later. I stepped inside, and the warmth of the house enveloped me along with the scent of pine and cinnamon. The living room had been transformed into something out of a magazine. White lights draped across every surface, a massive Christmas tree stood in the corner decorated with gold and silver ornaments, and a string quartet played softly in the corner. Marcus spotted me first. He was standing near the fireplace with Nicole, both of them holding champagne flutes. His jaw literally dropped. Kaycee? What the hell? Vanessa turned from her conversation with Derek and some older couple I didn't recognize. Her eyes went wide. Oh my God. Every eye in the room seemed to find me at once. The conversations didn't stop entirely, but they quieted, curious glances thrown my way. And I stood there in my navy blue gown with my head held high, refusing to apologize for existing. My mother leaned in close, her voice a harsh whisper. What do you think you're doing? I looked at her directly, my voice steady and clear. I'm attending my family's holiday party, Mom. Just like everyone else. My mother's face went through several shades of emotion before settling on forced composure. She couldn't yell at me here, not with her book club president standing 10 feet away. So instead, she plastered on that tight smile and said loudly enough for nearby guests to hear, "Well, of course you're welcome, sweetheart." What a wonderful surprise. The next 2 hours were the strangest of my life. I moved through the party like I belonged there, because I did. I introduced myself to my father's colleagues, discussed urban development policies with a city councilman, and even made my mother's snobbiest friend laugh with a story about my work. Every conversation reminded me that I wasn't the problem. I'd never been the problem. Marcus pulled me aside near the dessert table. You've got guts, I'll give you that, he said quietly. Mom's been shooting daggers at you all night. Let her, I replied. I'm tired of being treated like the family embarrassment. He shifted uncomfortably. Look, I didn't know they weren't inviting you. If I'd known, you would have what? I interrupted gently. Stood up for me? You've never done that before. His silence was answer enough. Around 9 o'clock, my father clinked his glass for a toast. He thanked everyone for coming, talked about the meaning of family and togetherness during the holidays. The irony wasn't lost on me. When he finished, I did something I hadn't planned. I raised my own glass. I'd like to add something, if I may. The room fell silent. My mother's eyes widened in panic. Family is supposed to be about unconditional love, I said, my voice steady. About showing up for each other, especially when it's inconvenient or uncomfortable. Tonight, I wasn't invited to this party because my parents decided I wouldn't fit in. But I came anyway because I needed them to see something important. I looked directly at my mother, then my father. You don't get to decide my worth. And you don't get to exclude me from this family just because I chose a different path. The silence was deafening. Then, from the back of the room, my Aunt Carol started clapping. Others joined slowly, awkwardly. My mother looked mortified. My father stared into his drink. I set down my glass and walked toward the door. Vanessa caught my arm. Kaycee, wait. I'm done waiting, I said softly. I'm done shrinking myself for people who should have celebrated me all along. I drove back to my hotel with tears streaming down my face, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were release. I'd spent 31 years seeking approval from people who were never going to give it. But standing in that room, speaking my truth, I realized something profound. I didn't need their validation anymore. 3 months later, my mother called. Her voice was small, uncertain. Your father and I have been talking. We owe you an apology. It wasn't everything, but it was a start. I've learned that teaching someone a lesson isn't about revenge. It's about setting boundaries and refusing to accept treatment that diminishes who you are. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love you most need to be reminded that love isn't conditional. And sometimes, the best gift you can give yourself is the courage to show up authentically, even when you weren't invited. Up next, You've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.